my favourite part of the evening, where I get to sit back, relax, have a gin and tonic, and introduce to you our guest speaker. So it's my great pleasure and privilege to introduce to you today. I'd like to say a fellow Kiwi, because I sound like I've got a Kiwi accent, but I'm a Kiwi in disguise. I'm actually an Australian, but I went over to New Zealand to fix up my Australian accent so I'd come back here and speak properly. But we have a true blue Kiwi here, Andrew Eggelton. He's from the South Island of New Zealand. In fact, he lived in the same town that I lived in for a while. And Andrew is the leading authority on authentic presenting and the visionary behind the Eggelton presenting method. And that's a style of presenting that sets out to redefine what world-class presenting looks like. Now, he takes people into a world where the space between the words is as potent as the words themselves. So he mentors speakers to work in a place of suspended presence, to take ownership of the space and not to surrender it. And, you know, to really connect with the audience. So there's a real resonance, and the audience can really feel the impact of each nuance. Now, I can attest to Andrew's skill in this area. He has trained me, absolute of this, and now I've been speaking for a while now, and he was able to get identify some things that really took it, just small tweaks that really took it to another level. And just come back from a world tour as well. He's 4 days into the country, probably a wee bit jet lagged, so he's here to join us today to talk to us about how to seduce your audience from stage or camera. So let's give a big warm round of applause to welcome on stage Andrew Eggelton.
Thank you. Can you hear me, guys?
We can.
Lovely, thank you. Yes, I'm 4 days off the plane. I think I had about 15 flights all up, and for anyone who's been on international travel in the last few months, you'll be able to contest that it's not that much fun. It's not like it used to be. Anyway, so I'm going to present this in, I'm not going to put a mask on. I'm not going to try and pretend that I'm not tired and jet lagged. I'm going to present from my current state, which is jet lagged. All that will do is how I'm feeling today will influence the words that I choose to articulate my topic of tonight with Nick and for you. So Nick, thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing you again when we post-event rocking again. I'm just looking for a venue. I'm going to speak to you all today about how to seduce your audience from stage or camera. And I'll start off with something a little bit controversial. The problem with most speakers is they speak too much. And I know we can't go around calling ourselves public feelers, but most of the connection that we have comes from the space in between the words. The space in between the words is as potent as the words themselves. So I would like you to be able just to entertain receiving some new ideas of how this, of how presenting from stage or camera can work. I love the beauty of this craft. I've been doing this since 1994. I used to work in TV and film and presenting and speaking full time. And challenge myself a little bit more. When I was in TV and on set and I was presenting or hosting a show, directors would often say, Andrew, just be you. And of course, if anyone's ever had that advice before they go on camera or stage, it's kind of ambiguous. It makes sense for like a split second, and then you get to the crux of it and you go, well, what does just be you mean? And I spent a number of years figuring what that meant. Because what directors were really after was a piece of you, a moment of you, and the moment that they normally wanted was the part where your shoulders were back and you were smiling and you were very high in energy. But that wasn't authentic, and it didn't feel right to me. So I spent most of my career figuring out what true authenticity actually meant and what the answer to what just be you means. So in the beginning of my career, I would never I would never have suspected or thought that I would ever get to this place where I'm actually teaching speakers not to speak. In the moments between the words, and if we can remember, the seduction is in the silence. The moment in between the words, especially from stage, the audience are able to have their own experience. They're able to feel. They're able to connect with you. And they will connect with you if you are connected to yourself. And the reason most speakers, presenters on stage or camera never get to this point is when we go into the silence, our heads become very noisy. Our heads become noisy with the doubt, our ego, our self-talk, asking if we sound smart, do we look good, should we have worn the red shoes instead of the black. All the noise happens in our head, and while all that is playing out, we're not present. And if we're not present, there's no connection with our audience. We are literally just delivering words, and those words have no weight to them. They're just words, it's just information. There's nothing about us that is attached to that word, those words. Okay. So a few years back, and I think I was moving into about 26 years in this business, I decided that if anyone was going to change things, it was probably up to me. And so I decided to start redefining what world-class presenting looks like. Now, just to frame this out, world-class presenting at this point looks like someone who, and kudos, because I understand how much time and dedication it still takes, but it's a performance. So we very rarely see someone at a world-class level who is truly authentic. It is normally them indicating or projecting the excitable version of themselves. And I've got notes all over my desk here to keep myself on point and to keep my brain nice and relaxed about what I'm going to go over here today. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at my array of notes. We're moving from the age of information into the age of connection. People want to connect. People are craving connection, especially after the last 2 horror years that we've been through, and especially for those in New Zealand and Australia. We're moving from the age of information into the age of connection. It is very level one to just deliver a story or deliver information. If you are a leader, if you want to connect with your audience, if you want your audience to see who you truly are, we need to move past just delivering information. So I'm going to begin with what authenticity really means and actually how to achieve it. So what I would like you to do through this presentation is to listen and to find one takeaway, just one. Just one that when you implement it and keep implementing it, it will become bone deep and then your new normal. Just one thing, just one little takeaway. So authenticity, I believe, must be our baseline, not the end destination. And the way that I teach authenticity is really, really, really simple. Super simple. But it took me years to discover how to make it really simple. So it's our baseline, it is not our destination. Authenticity creates the connection. Now, what speakers, when we're presenting on camera and we're presenting on stage, what we tend to fall in is we fall into the trap of wanting to project a better version, a different version than ourselves. We tend to want to project excitable. We tend to want to project that we're really excited to be here. We project our version of likable. Not actually us likable, but our version of what we are when we're likable. Very different. So none of those are obviously authentic. If I was acting tonight incongruently, I would try to be acting nice and excited and projecting my idea of likable, but then I'd be going against the grain of what I really am today, which is jet lagged. So if I roll with jet lagged, I now don't have this perception that I need to be something better. I don't need to try and show you or cover up that I'm jet lagged, and I don't have to project my idea of what likable looks to you. So what you're getting is really Andrew jet lag, but that doesn't stop me from being able to share my wisdom and my experience with you. So when I begin a presentation or a video, and I still do this now, 28 years into it, I still do this, and I still catch myself when I don't do this, and when I am projecting or I am indicating meaning I'm indicating to you that I'm excited. And often when people sell online or from stage, they indicate that they're really excited about the new program, but the energy's off. You either are excited about it or you're not. And if you're not excited about it, well, you better change your program to something that is actually excitable for you. And if it is excitable for you, you just have to be you. Because that excitement, that connection, your essence will be in those words. It'll be congruent with you. So before I do a video, before I go on stage, I just ask myself, how am I feeling? Okay, I'm jet lagged. I'm a little bit slower. Okay. How's that making me feel? I'm a little bit slower. I need more notes around me just to keep me on point. But I don't judge how I'm feeling to be wrong or right or good or bad or negative or positive. It is none of those things. This is what just be you really means. Just be you or authenticity could fit into a timeline. In the middle is the present, the me now, acting, reacting moment to moment. And the future is me presenting from a fantasy of what this should be like. But I'm not being me, it's my fantasy of what a presenter would look like, me presenting. And the past is the memory. It might have been me at a party and I'd had a few drinks and I was on fire that night and magnetic, or I might have been at a time on stage where I just woke up in the morning and went, oh my God, I'm on fire today. But the trouble is that doesn't happen every day. We have this crazy thing called being human that sometimes you just wake up and you go, oh my God, what happened to me last night in my sleep? I've got the grouch on or whatever it is, but you still have to do your video. You still have to do your presentation. When you own who you are, when you own that there is no good or bad or right or wrong or positive or negative to present from, you're always coming from this beautiful place of authenticity. And when you are authentic, you're able to be present. And when you're present, you're able to connect with your audience. So just be you means, or the tool that I will give you is no change of state. It's a really simple tool. There needs to be a congruence from when you are off stage to on stage, to off camera to on camera. Who you are off camera is who you are on camera. Who you are off stage is who you are on stage. I don't need to do jumping jacks off the side of stage. I don't need to change my state. I don't need to do breathing exercises to change, because I know who I am off stage or off camera is perfect. And if I own that, will be present. There's another little thing there actually that does help is, after 28 years, I still get nervous when going on stage, especially speaking to a lot of people. And what I will do at the beginning is I will frame it up by saying, do you know what I love about this? After 28 years of public speaking, I still get nervous. And so I own that right at the beginning. And then there's no need to pretend. I know some public teachers, speaking teachers, who say that you should never let the audience know that you're nervous, which just makes absolutely no sense to me. It's funny, and I did an event in Austin, Texas at the end of June, and I've started to incorporate, I know this sounds crazy, just entertain me here for a second. I've started to use horses or equine assisted training in my teaching of authenticity to speakers. And what horses do better than me They reflect back to the speaker exactly who or how they are. They reflect back to the speaker their true inner world. So on the outer, we can try to be calm and I remember the first time I worked with horses, and I knew I knew that I was making a mess of it, but I was trying to be calm. I had my palms out. I was trying to be relaxed and try to portray to the horses that I was relaxed and not a threat to them. But on the inside, I was really nervous because I hadn't been around horses for like 35 years. And when we're working in Austin, it's just what you're trying to project. The horses don't care about that. All they are picking up on is your true inner world. And so they teach you how to be truly authentic. This is actually pretty a magical experience if anyone wants to experience it at some stage. It's called equine assisted training. I know you can do it. There's amazing places all around Australia. So the best thing that we can do is have a baseline of authenticity. And the most amazing gift that we can give our audience is our true internal world. Our true internal world, an expression of our heart. And if we are performing, if we are projecting what our idea of excitable is, or our idea of authenticity is, or if we're projecting our idea of likable, we're not being authentic. And how can we attract our audience? How can we attract our audience if they don't know who we are? And they don't know who we are because we've never shown them. And I know speakers can get to a really high level doing this. And I take my hat off to them because I know how much time and effort they put into perfecting that craft. But I just know that we're moving into this age of connection where people want to feel you. They want to see you, they want to feel you, they want to connect. The thing is too, if we go just one level deeper than that, and we're already pretty deep, but if we go one level deeper than that, experiences enrich the brain more than knowledge. When we share those moments with an audience, when they truly connect with us, they have an emotional response. Emotions are a byproduct of an experience. Emotions are stored in the body. This is where you get people saying they might not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. So whenever I'm speaking, whenever I'm on stage, or I'm doing my videos, I'm looking to work I'm looking for the audience to experience through their limbic brain, the middle part of the brain, the emotional brain. And what's funny is that the limbic brain actually releases a chemical that helps you retain knowledge. So remember, level one is just sharing information. You get up on stage and you share information. When we move beyond that, we're moving into a place of craft. So I'm going to give you a few tools. Just to help you lift what you're doing when you're on stage, to help you connect with your audience, to help you engage with your audience, to help them remember what you've said, and that hopefully the essence of who you are is attached to the words that leave your lips. I always think as crafters like this, you learn one or two new things at a time. And at the beginning, these new concepts or tools sit at a very superficial level. We all know this. When we get these new tools and you love them, but then a month down the track, you forget to use them because they haven't become your new normal. What we need to do is practice these tools, which is why I'm saying take one away tonight. One tool, and you incorporate it into your everyday life, into your presentations, until it becomes bone deep. Then it is craft. Craft meaning it's automatic. We don't have to think about it anymore. What we're looking for is the difference that makes the difference. The difference that makes a difference. So I'm going to give you some voice tools to take away. We get to choose how our audience receives us. We get to choose that. We get to choose that by our voice. We get to choose we get to choose the words that leave our lips. We also get to choose how they sound. The one that I love, and the one that's not used nearly enough on stage or camera, is pause. When we finish a sentence, especially when we finish a point, is to leave that breathing space for the audience to think about what you just said and take that in. The trouble with pauses, and I know this because I have clients who that pause just is deafening to them. The voices in their head, they can't pause, they just need to carry on, and it's really hard to teach them to breathe, allow their words to breathe. So after you've made a point that you know that you want the audience to take away, or at least give them the best shot of taking away, you would need to allow that point to breathe. You're also, in that, when you're being assertive with that point and you're allowing it to breathe and have that pause afterwards, you're also showing to or indicating to your audience that this is something that I want you to remember. The other part that I love about a pause is it's dramatic. There's a sense of drama and it breaks things up. It's so simple because you're not doing anything. You're literally not doing anything, and it adds so much drama to what you're doing. It allows the audience to take in what you've just said. Sorry guys, I know my internet just disappeared there for a second. Can someone tell me where it was?
I thought it was a long pause.
Did it work?
Yeah.
The long pause, it adds drama. It allows you to separate sentences. It allows you to separate paragraphs. And it also indicates to your audience, this is something I wanted you to take in. All right. The next one is the textures of words. We're always looking as a speaker, if we're delivering information and words are feelings, words are opportunities, what are some words that we can give more texture to when we're speaking? The thing is with most speakers, I'm sure you agree, is they speak in I guess in a range of from here to here, and obviously my hands aren't to scale, but they speak in this very small range of how they use their voice. Now, no matter how potent the information, if someone's speaking for half an hour or 45 minutes, and their voice, their range is sitting between my hands, it's very hard for the audience to differentiate between what they said at the beginning, the middle, the end, or all the way through it. So how do we break up everything that we're saying? The pauses, the textures. There's something else that I love, which is called stretch and compact. It's literally just stretching a word out or stretching a few words out and then compacting them up. So effectively, we're also changing the pace. You have to change the pace. If you're going to use pause, we also have to use change of pace. So these few things here. One is the pause. The space between the words is as potent as the words themselves. It allows the audience to process, it allows the audience to have their own personal journey and to feel, and it allows us to connect with them in that space. Textures. What words lend themselves to you being able to articulate them with feeling, having some fun, stretch, stop, mountains, feeling. that feeling in your gut. These words create an emotional response in the body. Again, experiences enrich the brain more than knowledge. This is why when we go and watch literally most speakers, it goes in one ear and out the other. What we want is those people to feel. And most importantly is we want to connect. I'm just going to add this here as it comes up. A trustworthy person doesn't have to indicate or show that they're trustworthy on stage. If you're excited about your program or what you're selling, you don't have to act or show that you're excited. If you're a funny person, you don't have to go out on stage and try to be funny, because those moments will naturally come to you where the humor, those opportunities will naturally come where you get to be funny. All you're doing is acting and reacting. If you're likable, and you can generally say, do you know what, I actually quite like myself. I'm a likable person. If you're a likable person, if you're genuinely likable, you do not have to try and be likable. This is probably a little key piece, actually. I'm just going to leave a pause. If you're likable, you don't need to show you're likable on stage. You don't need to project, you don't need to indicate that you're likable. And this is something that happens in our heads all the time, isn't it? I hope they like me. It's like, I think one of our biggest concerns is like, I hope they like me. If I'm doing a presentation, I'm on stage, or I'm doing a video, I hope they like me. But if you're genuinely likable, your people in the audience will like you. If you can show them who you actually are, you will attract your audience. Nick mentioned something called suspended presence earlier, and we were working on it at the beginning of this year. I think, Nick, you were present in Gold Coast when we were working on those in some of the workshops, and I use these workshops to experiment just as much as for myself as those attending. It's a bit of a win-win, to be fair. We were working on how long we can hold those pauses for. And what we were discovering was, if your intention was clear, you could hold that pause for a really long time and the audience would stay there like a suspended presence. When I was in USA, I just spent a week in Hawaii with my mentor, and I jumped on a plane and I did an overnight flight randomly to another mentor of mine in Idaho. And I don't know about anyone else, I don't really sleep on planes, very, very rarely. So I'd gone all night, and my friend Anne picked me up and went back to her house, and she'd taken the day off. All I really wanted to do was sleep, but she'd taken the day off, so I noticed a piano in the corner, and I asked her if she played. And she said yes, and I asked her to play me something. And when you listen to music, and you know there's another note to come or a chord to come, and I asked her if she could delay or pause that last chord. Even so, my mind knew that it was coming, but how long was I prepared to wait for it? So she played this piece on the piano, and then she was able to, as long as her intention, as long as she was able to occupy the space and not surrender it over or surrender to the noises in her head, as long as she was able to occupy that space and not surrender it, she could hold that note there, or that suspended chord. And in music, it's called a suspended chord. She was able to suspend that for realistically as long as she wanted it. And I would stay there waiting, enjoying the intimacy in that space. And when I was speaking overseas, I practiced and played in that a lot. And what I was discovering was the same thing. As long as my intention was, they know that I haven't finished the sentence yet. And in music, when you finish the chord, when you've played that last chord, it's called resolving the chord. So I call that resolving the sentence. But what I was able to do was, and I discovered, was I was able to hold that place of suspended presence for a very long time. And I'm talking like over 30 seconds to a minute. As long as my intention was clear the whole way through and I was occupying that space and not surrendering it, the audience felt safe to stay there with me. And what we were discovering was the longer that we stayed there, the more intimate the connection between myself and everybody in the room, and obviously people in the room with each other, came. Now, what happens in that space? There's emotion. They feel something. They feel something. And that emotion is stored in the body. So whenever they think about Andrew Eggelton, or whenever they think about that event, that emotion comes up. That's how they felt on that day. Now, if I was just a speaker that got up and spoke in a monotone and delivered a whole lot of information, do you think they would associate any kind of feeling the same way with me that day? As I said, I didn't know after 28 years that I would be teaching speakers not to speak. It is only part of it, but I think it's pretty cool. So suspended presence is when the audience know that we haven't quite finished the sentence, and we're able to hold them in that space. And in that space, we create a deeper connection. And I know when we first start doing this, there can be a lot of noise. And what the key here is that you let that noise pass. You let it pass. It's just noise. It is simply fear or ego or our own self picking at ourselves. And once the noise disappears, and then the more you do it, the faster it disappears, you have a feeling. You come back to a feeling, and that feeling is you. And as soon as you get that feeling and you have that aha moment, oh, here I am, I'm back. That is when you start connecting with your audience again. This is the age of connection. An audience wants to connect, and especially we have so much information now online. If you want to learn how to present, you can go to YouTube videos. You can go to someone's website and get on their newsletter. But if you want people to get in their car or to get in public transport or to spend money to come and sit in a room with you, there has to be more than just information. How do you make them feel? And you get to choose this. And how do you want them to receive your words? We get to choose how our words sound. We get to choose the pace. We get to choose the textures. We get to choose how long we spend in the silences. And the only challenge with that is we have to learn to be okay with the attention that brings as speakers, as presenters on stage and on camera. Because when you start speaking a little bit differently, when you start sounding a little bit different than other speakers, when you start using pauses, especially when you start using the tool of suspended presence, all eyes are on you. The attention is on you. We need to be okay with that, because realistically that is our job. And when we are able to when we are okay with that, when we develop that connection with our audience, we create this beautiful invisible dance. It's like this piece of string is attached to your audience hearts and minds, and we're able to pull them. We get into this beautiful invisible dance. If we're just speaking, if we're just delivering information, if we're just speaking at them and we're worried about what it is that we're even saying or remembering what to say, we're not connecting, we're in here. So some of those voice tools were pause, probably my favorite. Suspended presence. How long can we hold the pause for? The textures. what words lend themselves to being texturized are opportunities. Pace. If you're going to use pauses and suspended presence, then we need to change up the pace afterwards. We can't just speak slow. We have to change up from quick to slow. Stretch and compact. Just another tool to make words and sentences stand out. So I'm going to, I haven't looked at the chat yet, Nick, but is this at the point where does anyone have any questions? Is that what you do at the end of this?
Absolutely. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions or even asking about how this all works in actuality as well, or any refinements, this is the time to ask. There's a interesting story in here from Lawrence, who says he did a course where they maybe do something like this to a stranger on the street, had to go up to them and say something, I've got something very important to tell you. And then just leave a pause for ages.
Oh,
and
I
then
love it.
to walk off, be like, wait, it's come to me. And then pause for as long as you can. And he kept someone with him for a good 45 seconds before they completely walked off. And that was a complete stranger. They should
I love that. I don't know if I'd get my those who I mentor to go and work with a stranger like that, but I love it. I really love it. Nice. It's just pushing the boundaries of this craft. I don't feel like there's been any kind of leaps in speaking for so long, and people really rely on stories, which is a tool. It's a wonderful tool, but people rely really heavily on stories to connect. When I just believe there's a better way to connect with our audience. Aldrin. Sorry, Nick, I just took over there.
Yes, thank you. Great conversation. I must say pause is something that I have been challenged with just a wee bit in my time. And I think it's from having done radio shows for years and avoiding that pregnant pause, or, that dead air, as they call it in radio land.
Dead air is not good on radio, is it?
No, dead air is really not good on radio or podcasts. So what do you recommend for those who are challenged with pauses like myself? Because it takes a point, I guess, where you need to get into your head to kind of consciously go, I need to pause now, or whatever. Is there any tips you can give around that?
Yeah, easy. It's simply a practice. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier where all these tools they're absolutely pointless unless we make them bone deep, and then they become craft. And so these tools have to become automatic. And Aldrin, I mean, you do struggle with that pause because we've worked together before, and this is what I would say now, a few years down the track. When I'm teaching it, I just grab a blog of mine and I draw into a couple of paragraphs. I might just get a highlighter and draw 6 lines anywhere that divides a word to word. So let me just grab something here. Age of information to the age of connection. And I'm just going to put a line between the age of information to age of connection. And then I would practice. Now, these pauses can be anywhere. There's no right or wrong or rhyme or reason. They can go anywhere because they just add dramatic effect, and they allow the audience, because the audience's brain is programmed to go, they haven't finished, have they? Especially if your voice is indicating that I haven't finished. So you're kind of pulling, not kind of, you are, you're pulling your audience to the front of their chair. And then if you snap the next piece, if you make it snappy, you push them back in, or you can keep seducing them and pulling them forward. So the age of information to the age of connection. And I would just do that 5-6 times anywhere with maybe a chunk of writing of your blog, and just play with it. And I have a unwritten rule. I practice 5 minutes a day. That's like my baseline of practice. So I grab my blog, I literally put in my pauses, my textures, I highlight pace, change the pace, stretch, compact, and that's all I do. That's all I do. And if I do it 5 minutes a day after a month, there's a vast difference in what you're doing. And I see that also in the people I work with. You can see the ones who don't do the 5 minutes, and you can see the ones who do 5 minutes. And the pause has become natural for them. And it feels so good. Does that help?
It does. And then I guess it would be a matter of retraining or repracticing when I'm then doing a radio show or a podcast or something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, you can use pause in radio and podcast, but you're not leaving. Intuitively, you would be going, how long can I do this? So you can still use it as a tool, but you're obviously, because you're not seen, you don't. There's a part of it that's a physical, but it can still work. It's just not. It's just not as dramatic.
Got it.
And by the way, here's the key to this too. Another key. In the pause, we're giving our brains time to think about what's next and what do I really want to say. So not just fill the space, or which nerves can make us do. We just like, all dead air, I better talk, that's my job, I'm a public speaker, I better speak. The pause allows us, it really gives, it chills our brains out. We're allowed to go, what do I really want to say here? And how do I want to say it? What words do I want to use to articulate this right now? And so we end up being far more potent in what we're articulating, because we're deliberately choosing the words.
I do get it. It's incredibly powerful when you do pause. That feels really, really challenging for me to pause, right? But I do get it. Public speaking, I get the power of the pause. And I guess it's just, I have practiced for so long now, flowing with the conversation, doing radio shows, etc. It's definitely a challenge. So I will take that on, practicing, slowing down, taking a breath.
5 minutes, 5 minutes, like that. That's all. 5 minutes a day, and just play with where you put the pauses. There's no right or wrong. Just throw them in anywhere and play. What you can play with though is, how long can you leave those pauses? That's the fun part. That's when you really start messing with your audience and playing, because that's where the seduction is. The seduction's in the silence. There's a part of seduction which is in your voice. How do I choose for my audience to hear my words? There's seduction in that, but there's so much more intimacy in silence. It's dramatic, it's intimate, and people all feel it.
Yeah, thank you. I've got someone snoring in the background, which is just perfect in the silences right now.
I heard that. I heard that.
So I'm going to just mute myself and move on. The beauty of live streaming.
Andrew, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please, Peter.
It's about the speed of the way we speak, okay? I've noticed when I'm coaching people to have sales conversations with potential clients, if they say, for example, if the sentence is, tell me a little bit more about that, and they say it like that, and the response they get from the person is far less effective and far less valuable than if they say it, tell me a little bit more about that. Could you comment on that?
Well, I mean,
why is that the case?
my comment is I love that, because you've made it very deliberate, and you've made it already sound different than what they've already heard. So their brain is recognizing just think of the words, and I just mentored someone in London, so I'm just going to use these words that she uses. Love is love. You can say it, love is love. Yeah, there's not much happening in that. You can say love is love. You can say love is love. Or it could be love is love. Those other four, you see how, then you see kind of how redundant to our ears, our imagination, when we go love is love, it kind of doesn't feel like anything. But when we give it the potency of slowing it down, and I'm being very deliberate in how I want you to receive these words. And so the way that you said that just before, you drew me in because you were being very deliberate. This is how I want you to hear it.
Yeah. And they find it very difficult to slow down. It's a real challenge for many people to actually say the words, Andrew, tell me a little bit more about that. That is a huge challenge for many people to do that.
They don't like this. They don't like to take up space. That's the main problem that I discover is people don't like to take up space, and when they do speak differently or more deliberately, they are getting more attention. Do you know what I mean?
Getting more valuable feedback.
Yes, yeah. And that's what scares people is those pauses, or when you start to articulate things in a different way, you're getting more attention. It's like, oh, Peter speaks a bit differently. But then they get used to it and actually go, no, Peter's actually very articulate. And when you slow it down like that, Peter, too, what I love is your brain's able to go, well, I mean, I didn't talk about heart-brain consciousness tonight, but I get to go, what's my point? But how do I want to articulate my point today? And instead of going, how do I normally articulate this point? I get to do a complete refresh and go, how do I want to articulate it today? From how I'm feeling right now. So I'm never worried about on stage. And when you enjoy that pacing too, is you're never worried about on stage about forgetting anything. Because they're used to the silence, and you're just very calmly. Do you know what I mean? I love the way you just said that. It's a really nice question, a really nice point. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
I have a question. Andrew, do you find that there are cultural differences between the way that people perceive the use of pauses and silence and the cadence that you use when speaking?
Yeah, do you know what's funny, Michael, is cadence is only a word I learned when in America. I kind of knew it, but Americans really use it, really use it. And yes, there is cultural differences, especially, I'm just going to use America as an example. You know, people in New York and Los Angeles talk really fast. And so getting them to slow down is quite a challenge. But then you get to Texas or Idaho and they're slower altogether. I find in England, and of course this is just a very sweeping generalization, but my general finding is they struggle with the attention. So their pacing, they like to just say things and get it out. And when I'm teaching them to slow down or change the pacing and the textures and enjoy the words, that tends to give them, they tend to come out in a rash.
And do you think that as a speaker, do you think that the audience, that there's a cultural difference in the way an audience reacts to you as a speaker using those silences, or do you think that's more of a bit of a kind of a universal human behaviour?
In my experience, and I guess I'm in a decent place to answer that, is because I teach pretty much all around the world, is that silence is just a place to connect. And no matter where I've been so far, and it's only really in the last few years that I've been exploring the space between the words, and it's only this year that I've discovered something what I named suspended presence. Like, how long can we suspend people in those silences? And no matter where I've been in America or Asia or UK, those suspended, that place of suspended presence, or the long pause, if you will, it just becomes a really beautiful place of connection. And I only use the word seduction because it's sexy. That's it. it just means that it's a place where people are connecting, and there's the seduction is when you're feeling that it feels seductive instead of being talked at.
I can see lots of useful applications of this for me in the teaching that I do, and it's a bit different to what I've done before in my use of silence that I've used before is in my law enforcement career, where silence is a good way of getting people to speak.
Yes,
because
yes.
I don't like awkward silences.
Yes, and that's what, isn't that funny? Because you're using that as an example, and it's in the silence that a speaker, the opposite, but a speaker gets like, oh my God, the silence is deafening. I need to fill that space.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing when you're interviewing people, isn't it? It's three
exactly.
pauses, and the suspect can't handle the silence.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice example.
Hey Andrew, it's Jenny here. I have a question.
Hey Jenny.
I recently got told at a networking meeting that how I present when I'm doing a speech versus how people interact with me one-on-one outside of that is quite different. So not necessarily that I'm performing when I'm on stage, but that I have a different level of connection with my audience and a different level of conviction that comes across in what I'm communicating. And I'm wondering, how do I translate that onto video on those days when I really feel uninspired and struggling to make that connection?
Okay, what I think I hear you saying is you tend to have a really good connection or presence when it's one-on-one. But what I think the end part there, what you were really saying was, what happens when I'm not feeling it?
Yeah.
And I've got to do a presentation, which I'm going to give you an example here. I just coached someone literally last Thursday in London, and she was an incredible coach. But what she does is whenever she's on stage, she has to be incredibly excitable. And of course, if she's not feeling high energy and excitable, she was getting tripped up, because it then becomes this kind of facade, or we're pretending, or, it's definitely not authentic. Now, I spent 6 hours with her. At the end of it, she understood it. Her work was amazing. And then the fear crept in. And she goes, but I think I'll just still be the excitable version of myself on stage. And what happens is we believe that calmer version, or that more introverted version, the melancholic version, the bit more glum version, is not as good as the excitable or funny or engaging version. But what happens is, when you allow yourself to be, we have to remember one thing. Being melancholic doesn't make us stupid. It just means you're in a different mood. Being agitated doesn't make me lose my wisdom or my 28 years of practice and research. And it just means that when I'm choosing my words, I might be a little bit more agitated. I might be a little bit more on the front foot. I might be a little bit more snappy. My pacing might be a little bit different. So I allow how I am today to influence my presenting. And what I love about this is, because I've come back from London a couple of times already this year, and I remember teaching. I don't know if you were there, Nick, but I had this terrible anxiety last time I come back from London, and I went almost straight back into a live session here in Gold Coast, a workshop. And I was anxious, and I was jet lagged, and I was tired, and I was like, oh my God, this is the exact opposite of how I want to present. And then I came back to, hold on, Andrew, you teach this. What do you teach? Authenticity. How do you get authentic? To own how you're feeling and not to judge it to be good or bad or right or wrong or positive or negative. So that session ended up being one of the best sessions I've ever done in my life. I loved it. There was no mask. I was not projecting. I was allowed to be me. And because I was allowed to be me, the room felt super small and everybody felt like we were all connected. Now, what would have happened if I'd have gone in there and acted for 3 hours, excitable? I'm so excited to be here. And I was, but I'm a little bit nervous to be here. I've got butterflies in my stomach. I don't know why. I can't explain it. I think it's just because I'm super tired. I've gone 2 nights out of 3 without sleeping. And now I'm standing in front of you all speaking. Does that make sense, Jenny? It's where you're judging the state that you're in to be better than another state to present from. There's a really long way of saying
it. Makes sense. It actually makes sense. I think the judging component is a big part of it. If I feel relaxed, I can usually do a live and just share whatever I'm thinking, but it's a closed group, so it's not out in the broader network, because I have been stopping myself that part because of all the judgments that come up. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with that message.
So those judgments, Jenny, are all yours for a starter. And when you come back to what does just be you really mean, just be you, that you can't judge the state that you're in to be good or bad or wrong or right or positive or negative to you presenting, because the audience are after you. And as long as that state hasn't made you forget everything, like I find if I'm agitated or melancholic or sad or happy or excitable, whatever that range is, none of it makes me stupid. It just means that I'll articulate it differently from a different energy. Like tonight, I haven't been overly smiley or excitable, but I don't need to be, because I don't want to put any layers on how I'm actually feeling. My job is just to give you information and hopefully you take away one thing from my 28 years. Just one thing. Does that help, Jenny?
Sorry.
Absolutely, it does. I think at some point it would be good to understand the difference between speaking from that place when you are inspired and you have something to say versus speaking from a place where you've just made a commitment to show up, but you're struggling to find something of meaning or value to share, you know?
Oh, I like that. I didn't go much into the heart-brain work today, Jenny, but I talk a lot. And it's one of my favorite things is heart-brain consciousness, and the heart-brain consciousness can only really be accessed if we're being authentic, because it comes from the heart-brain doesn't understand words. It's a feeling. It's a feeling. It can't understand words because words didn't used to exist. And obviously there's all these different languages. So my heart-brain didn't grow up as an English-speaking person. So my job is, depending on how I'm feeling, and where I'm coming from here is, this is the feeling. I know my topic, how to seduce your audience from stage or camera, but how do I articulate, how does my feeling today influence how I articulate my message? Now, so when I'm working in here, this never lets me down. No matter how I'm feeling, the fun comes from in here. So what you might find is, if you're not excited by what you're talking about, or you're not in that amplified mood, or your version of Jenny excitable or magnetic, is when we come back into here is, you can choose certainty when you go on stage or camera. Certainty is, I know what I'm going to say. I've said it 100 times, and I know I'm going to say this in the way that I want to today. And I don't do that. I'll choose uncertainty, but I'm allowing space for magic. So the uncertainty is, I know my points, but how do I want to articulate my points today? And if it comes from here, I will often be given sentences or ideas or words that I've never articulated before that just have a different frequency to them. I know that's getting deep, but does that make sense though?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. I needed to hear that.
Nice.
That actually makes me feel quite good about how I do things, Andrew, because I've been told that I go on stage or go in front of audiences unprepared, but somehow I can speak and, you know, off the cuff, and then, you know, it's all comes from, you know, the heart and the feeling, and every time different as well too. And I think sometimes being underprepared in the sense of I know what I want to say, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to come out. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to even start. It can be better than being overly prepared when it feels scripted. So that's really quite encouraging to me.
I love that. I look at me, so international. But I had a client in London 2 weeks ago, and she was so stuck on, but how do I start? And I was like, what do you mean, how do you start? She's like, well, how do I open? And I'm like, I don't care. Just open. Like, frame up what you're going to talk about. But how? Well, just talk. Like, what comes to your mind when you're on the side of stage and you're ready to talk about what you're going to talk about. But people get stuck on, they need certainty. So you don't practice, Nick, but you're prepared. You're prepared because you talk about this all day. And my preparation, because this is my vocation, so my preparation is, I don't map out what I'm going to say. I have my points. So I have my title. I have, in a 45-minute talk, I might have 4 major points, and then I'll have 3 sub-points off each point. And they will be my slides. So that just keeps me on track. And then when I look up at my slide, or if I know what's coming next, then I go, well, how do I want to articulate that today? And my preparation is, I would have gone through those slides probably 50 times and just articulated it in whatever was coming to me in that moment, in that practice session. So when I walk out on stage, I'm like, I know like 50 different ways I've said this already before. There's no way I can screw this up. Now, how much fun can I have? So that there's that bone deep sense of certainty of, I actually can't screw this up. I've prepared, but I never practice. Practice is, this is like the worst advice you ever hear, is practice in the mirror. Mirror practice. And I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you judge yourself the whole time of how you look? So you're in your brain going, how do I look? How do I look? How do I look? How's my posture? I'm like, no one cares about that stuff. They want, how do you make them feel? What is the wisdom that you're parting?
Excellent. No, I love that. All right. Well, we've got time for one final question. And I can see Morella waiting there, hand up, waving some emoji in her hand as well, too. So you got the last space there, Morella.
Am I unmuted?
You are
unmuted. We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, well, just firstly, I want to say this has been amazing. This has been the best. This is scary and such a relief at the same time.
That sounds actually sounds quite invigorating.
And I have a question. What about those days where you've got to present and things have gone pear-shaped and imposter syndrome rears its head? And you think, who the hell am I to present or speak about this when something's just gone pear-shaped? How do you deal with that?
So what I'm hearing you say is, when everything has gone pear-shaped and you've got this nagging voice in your head that is telling you, who are you to be on stage and be heard today and take up this space?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm only going to shortly relate this to me, then I'm going to really come back and answer your question. So when I decided, really it was during COVID, that I really wanted to redefine what world-class presenter looks like. Of course, the imposter syndrome was like, well, who are you to do that? And of course, I go, because I had a lot of time to think about it, was, who am I not? Like, who else is going to do it? Why not me? So the imposter syndrome, if you're feeling that day, is there anything stopping you? And I don't know your circumstances, but is there anything stopping you going out on stage and going, do you know, I woke up really weird today and I had this, I know I'm an expert, I've done this 1,000 times, I'm really damn good at what I do, I know I am, but I've had this little voice today saying, you're an imposter. What would that do to you? What would that do to you in that moment between you and your audience? Would you think that would be a crowd killer, or do you think it would allow them in?
It would create connection. And it's so funny because many times when I've started off nervous and fumbled and made mistakes and owned it, it's actually made everyone more comfortable. And I've felt less and less stupid and been able to laugh at myself and been pretty quirky. But I mean, that is something that at times I've had this panic thing where, stuff has gone wrong. I'm talking about a subject and actually my life, it's not turning out so well today.
Well, we all have that. We all have that. We have arguments with our partners. Yeah. We might be going through a death in the family, a separation, anything. But we still have to go and do our job, and which is why I love authenticity, because it allows you to take ownership of how I'm feeling, and then that feeling will influence how you articulate today, and that's where the magic comes from. But if you go, I'm going to pretend today that none of this has happened. I mean, we do have to be professional. We are professionals, and I do teach and work at a world-class level. So I don't go out on stage and tell, like, I'm going through a separation with my partner and this has happened. They don't need to know that. But this is how I relate to you, is after 28 years, Morella, after 28 years, I still go on stage, and if I'm nervous, I go, do you know what I love about this? I love my craft so much. After 28 years, I still get nervous. How cool is that?
That's a beautiful line, actually.
And the audience go, oh, he gets nervous too. And all of a sudden you've got this nice connection. And when you own that, you can trip over on stage, you can spill water down your front, and none of it matters. Like there's no facade. You're there to deliver your wisdom. That's the most important.
Own it on entry. Own it first off. Yeah.
You go, I might be a little bit schizophrenic and weird today, but I promise you, there is going to be some absolute nuggets of wisdom in here. You just have to keep listening. Does that make sense?
Thank you. I love that.
Yeah. I'm going to be that. Yeah. I'd like you to try that. Maybe find a way for yourself of how you would articulate that in a way that's liberating, honest, but still professional. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. What a great way to finish. I don't want to finish, actually. I'm just really enjoying this conversation. I could be here all night listening to this. It's this is my happy space of being in this. So thank you. So thanks, Andrew, for coming along tonight, and so soon after arriving back in the country, and the joys of being here in Australia and experiencing some of what we experience here with the internet as we get going.
Do you know what? It's always the same, Nick, when you come back, isn't it? You're like, oh no, I'll be fine. You always underestimate jet lag. You always underestimate it. You're like, no, I'll be fine in a couple of days. And then a couple of days go by and you go, oh wow, I forgot what it's like, the reality.
Yes, indeed. Especially if you don't sleep on the plane.
Yeah, I don't. No.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming in tonight, and it's been so good to listen to your wisdom and some of what you've got to share. And again, I've been in your workshops, and again, I learnt even more today. And for me, it's just little nuggets, gold nuggets that are there that, just really help to improve things. So, yeah, thank you for coming along tonight.
And my pleasure. And thank you for those that turned up. As I said, I hope you wrote down or remembered just one thing. If you took down two, that's a bonus. But the key here is to start implementing and just start playing with it, implement it so it becomes automatic. Thank you, Nick.
Well, what we'll do is for those of you that want to find out a little bit more about what Andrew does and how to connect with him and how to, learn some more things that he has to share. He has got a YouTube channel and the link for the YouTube channel is in chat. Lots and lots of things in there that will really help with your presentation, whether it be sales presentations, if you're on stage or on this medium here. This lovely medium called Zoom, where we are in 2D, not 3D, which presents its own challenges as well too. And we've also dropped a link into Andrew's website, andreweggelton.com. So feel free to go there and check out a bit more of what Andrew does and for your own learning as well too. So, but we do have a door prize tonight too. I know some people have had to drop off early because we're running a wee bit over time. We did start behind time as well too. So thank you for those that have stuck around. Your reward for tonight is that there is a door prize. So, and we've got a special way of drawing this as well. So what is the door prize tonight, Andrew?
Door prize is, I am about to start up my Gold Coast presentations. Plus, before the end of the year, I will do Melbourne and Perth. So you have a free ticket to either the workshops here on the Gold Coast, which I run every fortnight, or in Melbourne or Perth, if you're in one of those places, and probably Adelaide. I choose Adelaide because it's got really good, I can disappear into the Barossa afterwards. But yeah, you have a free ticket to come along to one of my workshops.
Does it include flights?
Does it include what?
Flights.
It does include.
Oh, what about over in Sydney?
You know what? Do you know what? I don't want to be mean about Sydney, but this is why I never come to Sydney. They always leave it to the last few days to buy tickets. Everywhere else, weeks ahead, and then Sydney is like, I don't know. I age waiting for it to happen. It's like an event manager's nightmare.
Well, I haven't been to Perth for 30 years, so I'll put me in.
As long as we can get it back out.
And we've got a couple of Kiwis I know here on as well. Any chance of you heading back to New Zealand, do you think?
Nick, I still have a little bit of a sore point about New Zealand. But yes, I will, and they are most welcome. I get it. It's still relevant. I just need to get over my I just need to get the chip off my shoulder and not being able to go back when I really need it. Yes.
All right, well, we do have a special way of drawing this tonight. So we have our wheel of names. Everybody's name is on here. So I know a few have left the room, but if anyone has left the room and we draw their name out, well, then you get an opportunity to go into the draw again because we spin the wheel again and they miss out. So let's have a virtual draw. Find out who our lucky winner is tonight. Hopefully first time round they're in the room. And it's Will. Will I am. Are you in the room? Let's just have a look through the names here. Is Will here? In fact, Will is in the room. Can you hear us, Will? Are you hiding behind the black canvas there? All right, well, Will is in the room. His microphone may not be working. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. So you're our lucky winner tonight. He is unmuting now. I can see him muting and unmuting, but we just can't hear him. That's okay, Will. We will connect you up with Andrew by email tomorrow. So I've got your email addresses. So just keep an eye out in your email. And yeah, that's a very good prize indeed. I've been to Andrew's workshops, well worth going to. If you haven't been to one, then definitely worth booking into it because it will take your presentations to a whole new level. So yeah, if you find that you're on Eventbrite, is it, Andrew? You put the events up?
I do. I use Eventbrite. Yep.
So have a look, search for him on Eventbrite, and also check out the website and his YouTube channel as well.
Most of my stuff, Nick, just to I do most of my advertising or releasing of where I'm going to be and dates and things in my Harder Presenting Facebook group. Like that's probably the easiest place to find me if you actually want to have contact. And
so if you look for you on Facebook and find your Facebook group.
That's it. Yep.
Perfect. All right. That's nice and easy. All right. Well, that's awesome. So once again, thanks, Andrew, for coming along tonight and sharing some of that with so many good comments coming through on chat as well too. So you've obviously hit the mark with people, and some good questions coming through from people as well too. So for those of you that would like to see this again, well, you're in luck. It'll be up on the Smash Go YouTube channel tomorrow afternoon. So the best thing to do is to go and subscribe to the Smash Go YouTube channel and hit the little bell after you subscribe. And that will ensure that you get a notification by email once the video is up online. Apart from that, if you like tonight, please feel free to like us on Facebook, to subscribe to the channel, like the video on the YouTube channel. And also, if you're not a member of the Business Owners Smashing It Online Facebook group, go and join now, because that's where we make all of the announcements of the other events come out. You will find this video in there as well too. And these cool online tools and apps that we shared at the beginning of the evening, they'll also be up there. So you feel free to make a comment if you discover something in those tools. Also, put that in the comments as well. Always love reading that and finding things that I haven't discovered. And of course, if you've got an online app, tool or process there that you'd like to share and let me know about to feature in that slot, please let me know as well too. So thanks everyone for coming along tonight. Thanks for sticking with us, for running over a wee bit late. Thanks for being here when we started a bit late as well with our tech issues. Go and have a sensational evening, and we shall see you next time. Have a